News when you want it with Bloomberg News Now. I'm Denise Pellegrini. Former Fed Governor Kevin Warsh calling for a regime change at the Federal Reserve, saying the multi-billion-dollar renovation at the headquarters is outrageous. Warsh also saying the Fed should cut interest rates, something current Fed Chair Jay Powell hasn't done lately.
The Fed has the policy mix exactly wrong. It has a big balance sheet like we're in the 2008 crisis or the 2020 pandemic, and has rates that are too high. It needs to shrink the Fed balance sheet and cut interest rates. In so doing, Main Street can get a much lower cost of credit. First-time home buyers can find their way into houses, and the policy mix would be right.
And Warsh there to Fox News. Warsh sometimes mentioned as a possible replacement for Powell at some point in the future. Another candidate sometimes named as a possible candidate, Kevin Hassett, National Economic Council Director. He told ABC's This Week today President Trump certainly can fire the Fed chair if there is cause. President Trump earlier this week said Fed Chair Jay Powell should resign immediately if allegations from an administration official that the Fed chief misled lawmakers about the Fed headquarters renovations prove true. The EU appears to be trying to de-escalate after President Trump threatened the European bloc with new tariffs of 30%. EU Commission Chief Ursula von der Leyen says the EU is extending the suspension of planned countermeasures against the U.S. until the beginning of August to allow for more negotiations.
We prefer a negotiated solution. This remains the case, and we will use the time that we have now till the 1st of August.
Von der Leyen also saying at the same time the EU will continue to prepare further countermeasures, so it's fully prepared. And Bloomberg's Kevin Whitelaw says European officials are scrambling to figure out how to get a deal with the U.S.
Trade ministers meet tomorrow as they try to figure out, how to get ready and how they're going to react if there is indeed no deal. How hard do they want to get apply these countermeasures? Do they want to use this tool they have? It's called an anti-coercion instrument that would really sort of be a big hammer, but it would obviously risk yet another set of retaliation that could spiral into an even bigger confrontation. So they've got a lot of difficult choices as they try to find their way through. For now, they're doing their best to ignore the trade threat that the latest one from Donald Trump.
Bloomberg's Kevin Whitelaw reporting from Washington. Germany's Chancellor Merz saying today President Trump's threat of 30% tariffs would hit exporters in Europe's largest economy, quote, to the core, if a negotiated solution in the trade conflict can't be found in the coming weeks. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte will be visiting Washington tomorrow and the following day. President Trump, meantime, saying he plans to make a major statement on Russia tomorrow. President Trump reiterating criticism of Russian President Vladimir Putin over Russia's continued attacks on Ukraine, possible Ukraine funds, and possible new sanctions on Russia among the things in focus. New flooding in devastated central Texas rivers. Search operations for the more than 100 missing suspended in some areas. Bloomberg's Brian Sullivan.
Those folks are going to have to get out of harm's way as the water rises again.
Bloomberg's Brian Sullivan reporting. In Iran, the foreign minister, Abbas Araghchi, says his country does plan to cooperate with the UN's nuclear watchdog. And Araghchi also saying Iran is considering a U.S. offer to restart nuclear talks. But he wants guarantees that there will be no further attacks on Iran in exchange. A year ago today, a would-be assassin shot at President Trump while he was campaigning in Butler, Pennsylvania. One of those bullets grazing the president's ear. President Trump's chief of staff cites divine intervention as the reason the bullet missed him. President Trump telling reporters last month his ear still throbs every once in a while. Nvidia CEO Jensen Huang says the U.S. government doesn't need to be concerned that China's military will use his company's products to improve their capabilities. Huang saying China's military will avoid using U.S. technology because of the risks associated with doing so. He said the U.S. strategy to restrict technology exports to China will fail because it will spur growth of domestic capabilities in China that will eventually rival those created by the U.S. technology industry. He spoke on CNN's Fareed Zakaria GPS broadcast. Superman opening at number 1 in U.S. and Canadian theaters, delivering $122 million in ticket sales. The picture was expected to generate at least $115 million domestically, according to industry tracker Box Office Pro. It's really the opening chapter in a 10-year plan to interweave movies and TV shows based on DC comic book characters. It's a strategy formulated by DC Chairman James Gunn and Peter Safran. And that's news when you want it. With Bloomberg News Now, I'm Denise Pellegrini, and this is Bloomberg.